Late on Friday evening, the ground west of Naples let go with more force than it has in decades. A magnitude 4.7 earthquake tore through the Campi Flegrei caldera, and if you've never heard of this place, you need to understand what you're looking at, because this is not some random patch of Italian countryside. This is one of the largest volcanic systems in Europe, sitting directly underneath hundreds of thousands of people, and it just delivered its strongest jolt in roughly 40 years. The quake struck at 7:46 inches the evening local time, with its epicenter parked almost directly beneath the town of Pozzuoli, only about 3 kilometers down. That shallow depth is the whole story right there. A deep earthquake gets absorbed by miles of rock before it ever reaches the surface. A shallow one doesn't get that buffer. It arrives at your doorstep with almost all of its energy intact. That's why, even though 4.7 sounds modest on paper, people in Naples described it as sudden, sharp, and far more violent than anything they'd felt in the recent seismic swarms of the last couple of years. The damage tells the story too. Trains and metro lines across the area were halted as a precaution. Power went out in pockets of the city after a high-voltage pylon feeding Naples came down. Firefighters spent the night responding to reports of cracked plaster, stuck elevators, and crumbling walls. In the Girolamini district, a hillside gave way entirely. A landslide of boulders came crashing down onto parked cars, crushing them, while a cloud of white dust rolled through the street and sent residents running. A handful of people were hurt, treated for minor injuries, but nothing life-threatening. Still, cracks opened up in the access roads at the port of Pozzuoli, serious enough that authorities shut the port down and suspended ferry traffic entirely. On the islands of Procida and Ischia, the shaking was felt clearly enough that local mayors activated their civil protection response centers as a precaution. Now here's the part that should actually keep your attention. This earthquake didn't come out of nowhere. Campi Flegrei has been quietly building towards something like this for years. Since around 2005, the ground beneath Pozzuoli has been slowly rising a phenomenon called bradycism. Essentially, the caldera breathing as magma and superheated fluids shift underneath it. That uplift has been creeping along for 2 decades. But starting in 2020, both the ground deformation and the earthquake activity started climbing at a much steeper rate. By this past May, cumulative uplift had already pushed past 1 meter, and scientists monitoring the system have been increasingly blunt about the possibility that this pattern of slow, steady inflation is edging the caldera towards some kind of critical threshold. To put the recent seismic run in context, 2025 was already a record year for this volcano, with 5 separate magnitude 4+ earthquakes rattling the region, including a 4.6 inches June and another in March. That was already unusual. Now, just 7 months into 2026, we've matched that count, and this new event has broken the ceiling entirely. In earthquake terms, magnitude doesn't scale in a straight line, it scales exponentially. Moving from a 4.4 up to a 4.7 doesn't mean a bit stronger. It means roughly 3 times more energy released. So, while the number only ticked up by 0.3, the actual physical violence of the event jumped dramatically. And in the hours immediately following, monitoring networks logged over 100 additional aftershocks, cascading out from almost the exact same point underground. So why is the ground doing this in the first place? Beneath Campi Flegrei sits a genuine magma reservoir, and above it, a layer of solid rock that geologists sometimes describe as a lid, sealing in pressure the way a cork holds pressure inside a bottle. For years, that lid has effectively contained the system, letting gas and heat vent slowly through fumaroles rather than all at once. But repeated earthquakes fracture that rock a little more each time. Think of it less like a switch flipping and more like metal fatigue. Every jolt adds another crack, and cracks don't heal themselves quickly. The worry among researchers isn't that this single earthquake causes an eruption. It's that if this pattern keeps repeating more swarms, more high-magnitude events, more deformation, that ceiling layer keeps thinning out, and each new earthquake asks the same question again with slightly less rock standing in the way. It's worth being honest about scale here too. This is genuinely one of the most heavily populated volcanic calderas on the planet. Pozzuoli, Bagnoli, and the western edge of Naples sit essentially on top of the caldera rim, meaning any serious escalation isn't an abstract geological event. It's a direct threat to a metropolitan area with a very long, very complicated evacuation problem, because unlike a mountain-shaped volcano where you can point to a summit and say, that's where the danger is, this whole basin is the volcano. The last time Campi Flegrei actually erupted was in 1538, a relatively small event by its own historical standards. Go back further. And its geologic record includes eruptions that reshaped the entire landscape of southern Italy, genuinely massive events, the kind that are studied precisely because of how much material they displaced. Nobody serious is suggesting this earthquake means a repeat of those ancient mega eruptions is imminent. The realistic range of outcomes here is broad. This could remain a slow-burning, decades-long process of uplift and periodic quakes that never actually reaches an eruption. It could also be the kind of gradual escalation that, historically, has sometimes preceded volcanic unrest elsewhere in the world. Scientists genuinely don't have a clean way to know which path this is on. While it's happening, that's part of what makes monitoring these systems so difficult. What's actually useful to watch going forward isn't the drama, it's the data. Keep an eye on whether the deformation rate at Pozzuoli keeps accelerating or plateaus. Watch whether gas emissions at the Solfatara crater shift in temperature or composition, since that hydrothermal system reacts quickly to changes in pressure underground. And watch the aftershock pattern in the coming days. A steady taper off is one thing, but a second cluster of magnitude 4+ events stacking up close together would be the signal that actually worries volcanologists, far more than any single earthquake on its own. For now, Italian authorities are treating this as a serious wake-up call, rather than an evacuation trigger. Civil protection teams are running structural assessments across the affected towns. The port remains closed pending repairs, and residents have been told to expect ongoing aftershocks, while officials figure out exactly how much damage occurred overnight. This is a region that has lived alongside this restless ground for generations, and the response so far reflects that heightened caution, active monitoring, and no panic, but also no illusions about what's sitting underneath the Bay of Naples. I'll keep tracking this one closely, because whatever direction Campi Flegrei goes from here, it's not going to happen quietly, and the next few weeks of seismic data will tell us a lot more than this single night did. If you want to stay current on it, subscribe, and I'll bring you the update the moment there's something worth reporting.